So hello, everyone. Hello, my name is Annie. I am the Director of Student Success here at Service to School. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and welcome to our Women in STEM virtual panel. In honor of Women's History Month, we have three amazing panelists for you to hear from and learn from tonight. And before we get started, though, I do have some housekeeping items, just things for you to know. First, this webinar is about 40 or 45 minutes. We'll do a 30-minute kind of Q&A, a moderated Q&A session, and then we'll do 10 or 15 minutes of a general question and answer session from you all. At any point, feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A box. I'll keep an eye on that throughout the night. If you're having connection issues, we find that Google Chrome is usually the best platform for Zoom. You can also feel free to restart your browser or your computer if you're having issues still. And finally, this webinar is being recorded and shared to everyone. Give us about a week to get the recording out. But if you're here tonight and you think that someone that you know might benefit from what you're hearing, we'd love for you to share this recording to any veteran or transitioning service member, or again, anyone you think who can benefit from this information. And I think that that's it. So I'm going to pull up our just a brief PowerPoint to kind of demonstrate a little bit about our panelists. Oh, I actually can't share it because I don't think I'm, oh, I can. I'm lying, everyone, I'm lying. There we go. Well, if you are new here to Service to School, one thing to know about us is that we are an organization that's aiming to help all military veterans and, again, transitioning service members gain admission to the best college or graduate school that they can. That's our whole goal. And actually, all three of our panelists today are ambassadors, meaning that they help us achieve that by advising our applicants. And as I said, here is a little bit about our panelists. So we'll start off with Kellie, and Kellie can give a little wave. But she enlisted in the U.S. Navy as a nuclear reactor operator. After her service, she earned her undergraduate degree in electrical engineering from MIT in 2022. And now currently she's an Eisenhower Global Scholar at the Blavatnik School of Government at the University of Oxford. Then we have Andrea Henshall. She served 14 years in the Air Force as a special operations instructor pilot and completed 7 tours of combat. She's currently a PhD candidate, research assistant, and graduate application assistance program mentor in the Department of Aeronautics and Astronautics at MIT. She earned her BS in astronautical engineering from the U.S. Air Force Academy, her master's in aeronautics and astronautics from MIT, and then if that wasn't enough, a master's degree in computer science. And again, she is currently a PhD candidate at MIT. And finally, but not least, we have Julia. She is a medical student at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. She graduated from Smith College before enlisting as an Army medic through the Military Accessions Vital to National Interests, the MAVNI program. In 2018, she enrolled in Columbia University's post-baccalaureate pre-medical program to complete those medical school prerequisite courses. And then she was accepted to Mount Sinai through the linkage program, which is an agreement between Columbia and medical schools to allow post-baccalaureate pre-med students to matriculate. And if you don't know what a post-baccalaureate degree program is, that's a great question to ask Julia. So again, thank you so much to our panelists for coming tonight. And I'm anxious to get started and to hear from you. So I do want to share that we will cover just a couple of things, generally, college choice, academics, extracurriculars, and application prep. These are things that I think, as someone who advises service to school applicants, this is the way that I would think through the college admissions process. And so I hope that our attendees find this helpful. So let's start by talking about your college choice. So for each of you, you all kind of came to college in a different direction as it relates to your military service, right? So for example, Andrea, you went to a service academy. Julia, you went to college and then enlisted, and then obviously Kellie, you, I think, transferred to MIT, correct? So how did each of you decide which school you wanted to attend? What were some resources, or how did you kind of end up where you ended up, especially in terms of undergraduate?
I can start if that'd be helpful. So how did I end up at MIT? I ended up back in Massachusetts, which is where I'm originally from, for family reasons. And I decided to go to college in Massachusetts. So I applied everywhere from UMass Lowell, Northeastern, MIT. And the only reason that I applied to MIT was that somebody important to me told me that I could not get in. So they're no longer an important person in my life, and I went to MIT. So it's taught me to value myself a little bit more on what I can accomplish and where I should place my goals.
Way to show them. Did you have a chance to tell them, like, hey, look at where I ended up?
They actually congratulated me for getting there. But I ended up at a community college in Massachusetts, and that allowed me to really, I wasn't aware of the Warrior Scholar Project. So being at a community college allowed me to basically do that over an extended amount of time, get the prerequisites that would be required to go to any tech-focused school, really.
Got it.
I can go next. So I chose Smith College because my family, actually my mom and my grandmother also attended women's college back in Korea. So I wanted to continue that family tradition and was interested in applying to women's college here in the US. But I really wasn't sure where, like, if I really liked the environment or not. It became pretty obvious to me when I interviewed with Smith that the group of alumni, they're very welcoming, even like, you know, I was just applying to college and I was just one of the applicants, but they invited me to, you know, the alumni dinner and trying to get me involved in their society more than any other school. So I really like the support from Smith College. And secondly, Smith also has very strong science program. They have this bridge program between Princeton and Smith for engineers, and they actually built one of the new hall called Ford Hall because Ford donated a bunch of, you know, like generous amount of money to build an engineering building. So I really like the support. I quite didn't know that I wanted to pursue my career in science or medicine at that time, but I was very interested in math at that time. So it was pretty obvious to me to go there.
Got it.
So as I was trying to figure out which school I wanted to attend, I already had a pretty well-defined end state that I wanted to achieve, which I think is pretty important when you're trying to figure out which school you want to go to. You want to make sure that you're picking a school that leads you closer towards that desired end state. So when I was looking for undergraduate institutions, I knew I wanted to serve in the military, and I knew I wanted to go into an aerospace or astronautical engineering program. So the Air Force Academy let me do both of them very easily. I will say money was definitely a factor for me as well. I had to go to a place that was going to cover the cost of tuition. And sadly, that plays into the decision making. You know, sometimes you may not, I wish it wasn't the case, but sometimes you may have to look at a cheaper school because finances are an issue. Again, I wish it wasn't that way, but that can be a factor. When it came to coming to MIT for graduate school, again, I was looking at the desired end state and what program that would translate to. So again, aerospace aeronautics and astronautics here at MIT. For graduate school, I had to make sure that there were professors that I wanted to work with that had availability for handling students. And then the key for me, why I picked MIT over other schools, was they had such a robust open learning program. So OpenCourseWare, MITx, edX, and I felt that aligned very well with my own values. So that's what made me pick MIT over anything else.
Excellent. So my next question, and Andrea, you kind of addressed this in that you had an end goal. So I'm curious for Julia and Kellie, did you know what you wanted to do after school before you chose the school? Andrea, given your, I think, academic, your academic career, you certainly, as you said, kind of knew what you were looking for. Julia, it seems like maybe you didn't know you wanted to end up in the sciences. So for the two of you, how did you kind of navigate what the next step was, and did you know what that next step was?
I can go first. I actually had no idea. I was an international student. I wasn't even sure if I was going to stay in the US after I graduated from college. So it was just, I just didn't know where I was going to end up at. I just wanted to get a job to stay in the US, where I spent most of my childhood. I am actually from Korea, raised until 14, but moved to Arizona with my family for, my dad had a business here, so we moved all together. But that doesn't really mean that I had permanent residency or citizenship to stay afterwards. So yeah, I had no idea. I just wanted to get a job in some field at that time. But when I was studying at Smith College, they didn't have any requirements in terms of certain, classes that you have to take in order to graduate. You had to meet 125 credits before you graduate. So that's all they required of. So I had ample amount of time to explore my interests, which I am very grateful for. And I initially thought I wanted to pursue pre-med. So I started taking, biochemistry, and I was like, oh, I have to take calculus. Let me try this, and I just fell in love in math. So that's where I went initially, and then towards the end of my academic career, I actually felt like I hit the bar of all my friends who major in math were pursuing PhD or some sort of advancement in that field, but I just didn't have that in me at that time. So it was very last minute when I decided to switch to economics, which I was consistently taking from year one. So I didn't have issue graduating on time, but it was a quick transition.
Kellie.
So when I was in the Navy, I was electronics technician nuclear, and my father was an engineer. And so that led me down the path of electrical engineering. And through some of my internships, I realized that it's not quite what I wanted to do. And I ended up, this is going to sound very cliche, and bear with me because it's 11 p.m. here and it's finals week. So I'm a bit chaotic. But I realized I wanted to help people in a different way. And I think what I've seen a lot is a lot of veterans get the call to serve. There's the cliche. But it's just becomes part of who you are. And so I'm actually doing my Master's of Public Policy at Oxford right now. That's why it's 11 p.m. because I'm in England. And even though I've had a dramatic shift, I'm finding ways to actually apply what I've learned previously. So I'm looking into doing a lot of energy and climate, and having an engineer's background really helps relay the information to those who might not have the same background. So even if you don't start where you end up, I think especially as veterans, we're much more readily versatile and can adapt and use skills in, I call it just interdisciplinary ways. And I think that's ends up being a huge mindset where it is okay that finish your goal and then alter it if need be.
I love that. I do want to echo that in my own experiences with the veterans is how adaptable they are. And there's a lot of anxiety, I think, as they're applying to college that like, oh, I don't have the right kind of prep, or I don't have like, I'm not a 17-year-old, out of high school who has taken the linear track of math and, I have all this stuff, but you're totally right in that there's the life experience part of it, and the learning on the go and being able to adapt is what makes veterans, I think, such a desirable population for colleges. So thank you for addressing that. I want to move now into the academic part of things. So all of you are in STEM. How did you academically prepare for your academic career in STEM? So again, like, what kinds of classes did you take, or, what was your kind of preparation like, given the fact that you served as well?
I'll step up and go first, since Julie and Kellie did for the last two. So I will say, when I was in high school, I took as many AP courses related to STEM as I could, and that set me up pretty well for undergraduate. Coming out of the military, going back into STEM, again, I had an idea of the program that I wanted to attend, and so I used a lot of the open learning resources that I was talking about. So again, I have to sell MIT's OpenCourseWare and edX because they're free. They were established more than 20 years ago. They set me up for success, absolutely. I also use Coursera and Udemy myself. I've heard good things about Khan Academy, and these are all free resources. And then just as long as you find the right person on YouTube, YouTube also has fantastic open learning resources. So I think it's important, if you're going into STEM after a long time away from a technical program, to really, brush up on the math skills, brush up on whatever niche learning you're going to need to succeed in the program that you're going into. So that's how I prepare to go into my programs.
Yeah. So coming out of high school, I moved around a lot and ended up, I had a good public education. And then for the last 2 years of my high school, I went to a middle of nowhere school that did not have the best education. And so I ended up math-wise just getting through pre-calc, and then there was physics, but no AP courses for that. So fast forward 6 years, community college ended up being just the platform that I needed to get back in, get confident in my skills again. And it's affordable. And if anyone at any time wants to talk about different chapters of the GI Bill, please let me know. I've used 35, 33, and 31. So.
Thanks.
Yeah, like Andrea, I also took a bunch of AP classes when I was in high school, but that's back in 2009, very long time ago. And when I went to college, I had several credits from AP classes, and I was actually taking a lot more than regular student to graduate early. So I finished my college in 3 years. So my GPA back then was not like my priority. I just wanted to graduate and get a job. And then, Army opened up NAVNI program. So I joined the Army like 4 months after I graduated from college. So I have to say I got very lucky with that. And after the Army, I applied on my last year of the Army, I applied to Columbia Postbac program to do medicine. I just didn't have any pre-med required courses credit, because I think now the admission says you have to take classes within that 10-year period, or within that 10-year period, like before you apply. And mine was a little bit, like a little bit close to like expiring from that. So I decided to take all of that again during postbac program. and then apply to Mount Sinai. But Columbia was not easy, I have to say. They actually make it sound like, oh, you're gonna do 2 years and you're gonna get into med school, but not everyone who entered the program graduate, and not everyone who finished the program go to med school. So I just wanted to put it out there in case everyone's thinking, oh, let's go to Columbia, you know, use my GI Bill because it's free. But I just wanted to let everyone know. And I use Khan Academy on a daily basis. I don't think I would have made it out without Khan Academy. And I actually didn't take the MCAT because of the linkage. So I don't think I can say much about that, but yeah. And then Columbia, they also stress on doing extracurricular activity on top of that. We can talk about that in a little bit, but just wanted to put it out there.
Sure. Okay. So to summarize, you guys mentioned some really great resources that I hope attendees caught. You know, the free kind of open courseware that's out there, edX, which I agree is a fantastic resource for you even to explore interests. Community college is the foundation, and it's something that we at Services School value so much because it does allow you to kind of fill in the gaps to help you get to that next step. And then something like a post-baccalaureate program, which if you're not familiar, for example, for medical school, if you wanted to go to medical school, but you didn't major in the sciences or you didn't take pre-med prerequisites when you were in undergraduate, something like a post-baccalaureate degree would help you kind of get everything you need to be competitive for medical school. And then this one had that added bonus of that linkage program where you didn't have to take the MCAT. So I can see why it would be competitive, but that's another great option for someone who maybe didn't know what they wanted to do, but you know, here are a couple of different ways for you to kind of get caught up to get to that next step. So those are all really excellent resources. Did any of you struggle academically at any point, or did any of you have to like seek out resources or get help in some way? And what did you use?
Okay, I can talk about this one. So coming out of I went from the Air Force Academy straight to a master's at MIT, and I did really well at the academy. So I thought I was prepared for MIT, and it turns out MIT had a much more theoretical approach to the aerospace degree than the Air Force Academy did. And so my first semester at MIT, I got a B and a C, which doesn't sound very bad, but for grad school at MIT, a C is basically you failed, but we could see that you were trying. And the instructor who taught that course in which I got a C told me, maybe you should consider a different degree. But I think kind of like Kellie, yeah, I see your face. It lit a fire underneath me and I was like, heck no, I'm going to succeed here. And this is when I was at Draper Labs at the time doing the Draper Fellows program, which is now Draper Scholars. And one of the employees there talked to me about OpenCourseWare, which had just started, I think a few years prior to me being at MIT. And so I looked very seriously at where my weaknesses were in my knowledge. I took the appropriate courses through OpenCourseWare. The next semester I had an A and a B, and I've never gotten less than an A since then. So again, those open resources, open learning resources were absolutely critical to me finishing my program.
I did great. Community college was amazing, did great. And then when it came to MIT, there was a complete culture shift that I was not prepared for. And some of it was just that there's amazing veteran support at community colleges, or at least at mine, the two different ones that I went to. And I got to MIT, and Andrea can speak to this. There was no veteran support. And that went from admissions all the way through. So I'm trying to like knock it into like the horrible moments of my time there. but I did have to look into mental health resources, which MIT was not able to help me with. So fortunately, the VA is amazing, and they got me in immediately and helped me get situated. I had just gone, some of it was because my life the year before was non-ideal. And some of that is my father passed away and that type of things. Sorry, I go very personal very quick. And so some of that was just finding the resources. And that's when the Veterans Club found me, actually. And there was no official club. It was just some of the veterans had found one another. And that community is actually what started driving me forward. And I ended up coming out of MIT, I think my GPA, because they do it out of a 5, I think it was a 4.2 out of 5, but I definitely failed quite a few exams. So failure is not the end of the world. But it was the MIT veteran community. And at my time, it was just, the very beginning, it was just the undergrads. There was about 6 of us. And then eventually we ended up joining with the postgrad. And that was absolutely amazing because we started making real change at the school for future generations of veterans. And it was just, the professors were huge in helping me because they recognized that I was a non-traditional student at times when the other offices did not recognize what a non-traditional student really is. So you just have to find your resources.
Yeah, so I did pretty well up until like Columbia. Linkage was pretty competitive, so I knew that I had to really meet the academic goal to even have a chance in linkage. So I did pretty well until then, and Columbia had phenomenal resources for veterans. They have, financial aid officers just for veterans and just for those people who are using GI Bill or VRNE. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with that, but if you have disability rating over 20%, you can apply for VRNE program, and they will support your academic goal if that's related to your career changes. So when I first came to Mount Sinai, that's when the pandemic started. So I started off with online classes, and it was very hard for me because I really lived in the library during Columbia time. I was there for like 15 hours a day, to just stuck at home, not being able to go elsewhere to study was very, very difficult. So I even considered like taking a year off, but we have phenomenal education counselor. So I work very close with her. We also have social worker who's assigned to like individual students. So I also work with them, and my dean, he also is very involved in my academic progression here. So I had ample resources here at Sinai. But one of the challenging things here is that they didn't really know much about, GI Bill or VRNE program here at Sinai. So it was very difficult for me to navigate that. But I feel like everyone, when I raise a concern to school, they always have someone to like reach out to me and trying to resolve that. There's an organization called MedVets. Chris Belair, I met him at Columbia, and he started that organization at Columbia and kind of brought similar thing here at Sinai. So there was a very good veteran support here already when I came in from upperclassmen, and that was very helpful. And I would highly recommend to other veterans to look for that, or even ask if there is a strong veteran community at the academic institution, because that really changes the level of resources that you can get or you can access during your I guess, academic career.
That's a good point, Julia, that that should be a part of the research that you do, right? When you're deciding where to go, is trying to find that community. But as Kellie said, if the school isn't good at it or doesn't have it, another avenue is to ask, like, will I be able to do this at this school, right? Can I create this community? Okay, let's switch gears to talk about extracurriculars. What were some STEM activities that you took part in, either in college or in graduate school? And what would you recommend to someone who wants to build out that profile?
I can go first. For a medical student, they're looking for specific extracurriculars. They want to see that you did volunteer work at, anywhere but medicine. Like, let's say you volunteer to teach kids, that counts. You volunteer at the local library to help seniors with computer skills, that also counts. So I actually did my volunteer work through the organization in New York. I just can't recall the name right off on top of my head right now. But I volunteered through them, and I also did research during my time at Columbia, over at the Columbia Medical Center with pediatric GI. But I think what counted the most during my admission, or my admissions with Icahn, is that my time in the military. I was a medic, so I had ample time to shadow or work in a medical setting. And I also got this badge called EFMB. I think that also counted a whole lot during my interview process, because they asked tons of questions regarding my military experience and whatnot. And a lot of my medic friends also gain admissions in medical school throughout the US. So I think that really helped in the long run. But even if you don't have any experience in medicine, there's ton of veteran students here at Sinai who doesn't have that experience when they're in the military, but they found their way to get involved with patient care and research before they applied to medical school. I can talk a little bit more about that, I guess, like separately, but just wanted to mention that.
I'm trying to think through what I did. What's 6-7 years ago? But I do know at community college, I was involved with just different STEM clubs. We did some fairs for some children. I got to talk about why the sky is blue. It was phenomenal. But if there's something that you're very interested in, go do it. Like, go get more knowledge, go find out where in the community that is, because not only will you enjoy it, looks good on your application. And then while I was at MIT, I knew that I needed something that would force me to work out, because that's good for you. And I ended up walking onto the rowing team. And so I still row. So that's one of the ways I found a community was through extracurriculars. So beyond just throwing it on an application, it's finding something that's good for you.
I agree with Kellie wholeheartedly. Finding something that you're passionate about that kind of helps you stay motivated. Maybe I know it helps me when I have like an academic rut, having something that I'm passionate about and that makes me feel like I'm doing really well on something really helps. Along with what Julia said, yeah, having some sort of volunteer experience to kind of help round out your application is definitely helpful. I would say universally, some sort of leadership or teamwork as well is very useful for an application. In the engineering world, I will say if you're going more towards industry, you're going to want to focus on research opportunities, internships, things like that. Publications are kind of dependent on which direction you want to go. If it's really research heavy industry, then you're going to want to focus more on publications. If you're looking to go to academia, then you really need to make sure that you have some teaching opportunities. So maybe you're TAing a class, maybe you're teaching like a K through 12 course, something like that. And then again, they're also going to heavily emphasize research and publications. So it also kind of depends on which direction you want to go.
Excellent. Okay. So let's talk now about preparing your application. And for our attendees, if you have questions, now is the time to ask them. So I can collect those questions and ask in a few minutes. But regarding application prep, what advice do you have for an applicant who ultimately wants to end up in a STEM field or in a STEM program like engineering or the sciences? You know, what can they be doing now to prepare?
I think you're all doing the first step very well. Going to different, I guess, webinars. But what I ended up doing is before applying, about a year out, I would go and like sign on to the application portal and bring all the questions in so that I had a very long time. So it'd be like another year cycle before I was actually applying, because they may change the questions a little bit, but not completely. So I would be like, oh, I'm going to submit an application, because they give you all the questions without you actually having to submit and pay, which there might be waivers for that. So double check that before you do that. And then I hate this, but have other people read through your writing. I hate writing, especially about myself, in a positive light. So let other people go through and say, just let them mark it up. It's okay. But for me, that was really difficult. And so now I have very specific people that I go to because I've become comfortable with that.
I would say research the programs and the universities that you're applying to, know what their mission statement is, know what the vision is. If you're looking to work with certain professors, know what kind of work they're doing, what's important to them. And then you really need to look at your application from the admissions board perspective. It's too easy to want to talk about what you want to talk about and what you think is important, but you've got to ask yourself, what does the board actually want to see? And that can sometimes take a little bit of research to figure out. And then really focus on, again, I keep seeing this tendency to people want to answer the question they want to answer, but the board has already said, these are the questions we want you to answer. So please focus on answering the question. And it may involve like you have to highlight parts of the question in different colors and then parts of your response in those same colors to make sure that what you're talking about actually answers that question. It's time consuming, but it's important to get right.
Well, the resources that I utilize first before I even apply to Columbia is sign up for services school for mentorship. That really helped me a lot because I didn't know if I wanted to stay in the military or get out and pursue civilian route. So I was in like between of everything. And the mentor that I got paired up with, he went through all my questions, you know, one by one and addressed all my concerns. So I think it's very important to talk to someone who's already in that field, much ahead of you, to see which, you know, they have seen other people reaching their goal in different routes. So they know more than you are. So I would definitely listen to those people who are ahead of you, talk to your advisor if you have one, especially when you're pre-med. It's easy to get lost because, you know, you have access to a student doctor network telling you that they have 4.0 GPA with stellar MCAT score, and they have thousands and thousands of hours on their research and volunteer work. And it can very like easily distract you and discourage you at the same time. So I would talk to those people who are already ahead of you, not those people like, yes, it's okay to talk to your peers, but if you find yourself getting very, you know, anxious and distracted because of that, you know, it's okay to move on and talk to other people. And be open-minded. There are multiple ways of becoming a physician nowadays. DO school is one of the ways that you can pursue. Caribbean school is definitely harder to, get into residency, but it's one of the ways of pursuing medicine. So if you know your end goal is becoming a physician, not just pursuing medicine at a good institution, then it should be okay. And, talk to a lot of people in medicine already. Talk to attending, shadow attendings, and see what they say about their field. It's very important to know, what your career is going to look like when you reach that point. Some of them are saying, "Oh my gosh, radiology is a dying field because AI is going to take over." But when you actually talk to attending, they're not worried about that at all. They're actually excited for AI to, advance in a way that it can make their life a little bit easier. It can make their job a little bit easier because they can identify little stuff that human eyes may not catch. So talk to those people who are ahead of you. I think that's very important.
I loved all of your answers. I was like frantically taking notes on my tea bag here. In that, I think the focus, Kellie and Andrea, about what we said about like essays and familiarizing ourselves with the application is huge. Essays in particular, I think a lot of people tend to think like, oh, I can write this in an hour and submit my application. But the truth is there's so much more that needs to go into an essay. And you're exactly right, Andrea, regarding what colleges are looking for and what you want. There has to be like kind of a mutual, like there has to be a match. And very few people take the time to kind of think about, am I what they're looking for? So that's awesome. And then Julia, obviously, I just want to echo that idea about service to school, being here to help. I know you mentioned that you were considering taking like a year off and you're not sure. If you come to service to school, we can help with that as well, right? So you don't have to know, yeah, I want to apply to college, spring 2024. We can have a conversation, and we as advisors, staff members at Service to School can help you figure out, yeah, that's what I need right now, or no, actually, based on what we talked about, I'm going to go to community college for a year, or I'm going to do this for a year, or whatever. So we're certainly here to help, not just with the traditional kind of, yeah, let's apply to college right now, and we can help you do that, but also with is now the right time? Is that the right step? So I love that. Last call for questions. I'll ask one more question and we'll see if we get any other questions from the audience. But what is the most important thing, one thing to keep in mind as you put your application together?
Think of it as a story, because you're going to get asked 5 or 6 different things. So how can you use each one to tell a complete story? And then that way you're not talking about the same thing every time. And that shows a versatility. And yeah, just tell your story, but different parts of it, different chapters per each question.
Be yourself. Don't try to, lie on your application, because people will know. That was the number one thing that I was told when I was applying, and that I would highly stress on before you apply to any institution. And also keep that in mind, that during the interview, you're also trying to find out if the school is a good match for you. Yes, I mean, it's great to go to an institution where it has the fame and names, but it doesn't mean that it's for you. So be mindful of that when you're applying, and know that you have a choice, and know that you are there to try out if the school is a right fit for you.
I would say as you're applying, be very as objective as you can in assessing how strong you are as a candidate or applicant, And if there's anything in your academic record or extracurriculars or something like that that you view as a little bit weak compared to what you think the other applicants are, it's okay to explain that on the application. You know, maybe you had some family demands, maybe you had to work a full-time job as you were going to school. All of those are taken into consideration by the admissions board. So it's better to recognize that in yourself and address it so that they can actually make a holistic assessment of how strong you are as an applicant.
Awesome. Those are all excellent pieces of advice. We did not get any additional questions, which I think means that we did a fantastic job of covering all of the bases. Just kidding. If you have questions after this panel, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I think I can share maybe the contact information for our panelists with you if you reach out to me. So if there's something that you want to learn a little bit more about, feel free to contact me and I'll field your questions as appropriate. And if you're not already following us kind of everywhere, you should, because we have great events every month, in addition to all the other work that we do. And so we'd love to have you come by there too. Thank you guys so much for coming. And thank you to our panelists who, you guys are awesome and so accomplished and incredible. And thank you for spending your Thursday night, your very late Thursday night with us, Kellie. And again, Andrea, I think you might have to end our webinar here, but if anyone has any questions at any point in time, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you. And thanks for coming.